Alright, so for quite a while now I've been fighting an issue with my Renix engine monitor betas where the screen likes to glitch out. Um, Now at first I only noticed this on a couple other people, alright, so a few people have reported that they were having this issue, and I couldn't figure it out. And then finally it started happening to me, so that was really useful because then I could troubleshoot it myself, because it was really hard to figure out when it wasn't happening to me. So, uh, I found out that the problem had to do with the screen losing sync. And big shout out to Greg for helping me out with this. He's like an electrical engineer and he's been messaging me on Facebook. And together we finally got to the bottom of this. So big shout out to him for, actually helping me, track this down. Because it's been bugging me for a while. And with him, it finally helped me notice something that I didn't really look into before. So thanks. I'll show you all my findings afterwards, but if you just want to see the fix, then just watch this real quick. There's two things that we need to do. First, we need to deal with the light sensor, because I kind of didn't clean that up as well as I should have. And the second, and the biggest fix, is going to be adding a secondary ground to allow the screen to ground properly. So let's open it up, and I'll show you what's going on. So first off, slide the door off. Alright. So this is our secondary ground right here, this black wire. It'll go to the ground pin on our Arduino. So that is the second pin from the bottom left. Alright? So that guy right here, that is our ground. And you can see it says that little G. So we're going to run a wire from this ground over to this pin right here. Alright, so we got this little gap here, we got these little two that are trimmed kind of low. So if we come over to this section of the screen, you'll see this little square box. You want the wire to be on this one, alright? So that would be the fifth one over from far right. So you just run a ground wire there and it's all okay. Now the other one is fixing the light sensor. So we have to slide this out. The best way that I've found to do it is basically you have to like pull the case back a little bit. Like you gotta bend it. So you kind of bend it out a little bit with two hands. But you push the jack side out first, carefully. You just push on the screen. And make sure that the buttons don't get bent too far because you might mess them up. So once the side's popped, then you can spin it around and then pop the other side. But just imagine that you're kind of, you can stretch the case a little bit. Now, if you've never taken it apart before, it might be a little rough the first time around, but you can get it out. Just make sure that those buttons aren't getting bent. Okay. So this is the second modification that we're going to want to do. This is our light sensor. And all we want to do is we're going to bend this out just a little bit, and you're just going to put a little bit of electrical tape there. Because it's just going to look like these regular pads right here. So what we're doing is using this electrical tape to make sure the light sensor is not touching those pads, because that could also be an area for interference. So just put a little tape in there, bend that back, and everything's all happy and ready to go. So with the tape and the ground wire, you shouldn't have any more glitches. So, alright, follow along and see how we actually figured it out. So the way that the screen works, you can use it in an 8-bit mode or a 4-bit mode. In 4-bit, it has to send 2 chunks to get the full 8. So that's what's called nibble sync. Basically, half of a byte is a nibble. So you got a bit, a nibble, and a byte. But if it loses nibble sync, then it's like, the last one is the first one's the last, and it's just all out of sync, and it gets really confused. So I found out what the issue was, and I was able to patch a band-aid into the code so that you can see how to use that. But again, it's only a band-aid. It's not fixing the real issue. Now, something I noticed was that the alpha models weren't ever having this issue. So it had to be something to do with the hardware. So my issue is when I hit the gas or give it like some really decent throttle, the screen just bugs right out. So I've built some code, and I'll show you how the code works so that you can fix the issue. but I need to figure out the real issue. The code is just a band-aid. Okay, so first up, in the latest version 0.791, I think. Yeah, 791 plus. The first thing we can do is if we go into options and display, there's an option for auto resync. So if we turn this on, you'll notice it like pulses like every second, so it'll automatically fix itself every second. So if you're having constant issues, like when you hit the gas and it just keeps freaking out and freaking out and freaking out, this will fix that. If you don't have problems though, it's not recommended that you turn it on because it kind of just makes it glitch out and it's not the most pleasing to look at. And the next thing that I've added is no matter what, anytime you hit the home button, it'll refresh the screen. So, if it only bugs out, maybe once in a blue moon, you can just hit the home button and it'll all be better. So I just figured I'd show you that real quick. So that's the current band-aid. So if you're having issues, you can use that, and then your screen should be okay. But now let's see if we can figure out what the proper issue is. Okay, you ready? Gonna give it some hard gas. So that's my issue. So that's what that does. Now if I can hit the home button and not crash, it's all better. So, at least now we can kind of band-aid it and not have to unplug it, but we need to figure out why this thing freaks out. But only sometimes. It seems like it only does it when it's in like a load. I don't know, this is tricky. So it doesn't seem to bug out as much. I feel like before, when that light sensor was messed up, that thing would just go digga 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 digga, just freak out forever. Still does it. Alright. And like I said, that auto resync will automatically, it's basically like automatically pushing that button every second, so it'll, fix itself. Okay, so looking at the difference between version 1 and version 2, these two wires over here are grounds for the LCD. And if you notice, it's got a pad to the jack and a pad to this transistor, which both go to the Arduino. On version 2, you notice that line doesn't go there anymore. It only goes over to the jack. Now, in the previous one, I guess that's called a ground loop or something, and that's something you want to avoid. But I'm just noticing that that's something different. So this LCD has to travel through the jack and all this other noisy stuff to get to the Arduino, and that could possibly be an issue. So to see if that's an issue or not, next what I'm going to do is add a secondary ground, and that one's just going to go right from that pin straight to the Arduino. Alright, so no middleman. So next we're going to see if we can get the thing to freak out like this. If we can get it to freak out, then I guess it might have not been a ground. Now the only thing I'm not perfectly emulating is, I guess technically the wire should go from that pin to the transistor to perfectly, copy what that's doing. But we'll see if this does anything. If not, we'll move over to the next step. Okay, so this is the test with that alternate ground. Really? Really? Huh. Is that really what my issue was? Let me pull off for a second. Let's give it into the go. That must have been all it was. Some kind of ground interference. Holy crap. Yeah, it's not bugging out once. Okay, so just to confirm what I was figuring out before, I tried one more test. So to see how particular the ground was, The next step was to take this wire out, and then I ran from the outside pin, so the one closer to the jack here, and I ran it to this ground rail down here. Now, the interesting thing about this ground rail is that it still is in line with that Ethernet jack. So it goes from the jack to this contrast knob, over to this ground rail, and then to the Arduino. So I removed that wire, this black one, and I put it from here on this ground over to that corner. And when I went to go try it, it's still bugged out. So it has to do with this jack. So for some reason the vehicle ground makes this thing absolutely bug out. Now the last thing that I should really do is try to delete the ground loop. So what I'd have to do is come in here and cut that trace so that the screen is not connected to this jack at all, and it just goes straight from here to here, because that could be another issue. Maybe for some reason this weird ground loop thing is helping us out. So that would be the last thing, is to just make sure. But yeah, that seems to be what the issue is. It's, you know, just a ground issue, and it's crazy that stuff like that, just something a little change like that in the circuit design completely throws this thing off. I've been chasing this problem for months, and man, is it obnoxious. So again, big shout out to Greg. Thank you for finally pointing me in the right direction and figuring this out, because it's been bugging me all to hell. This is one of the main reasons I haven't made version 3 yet, is because I wanted to get this issue figured out once and for all. So, hopefully, in the next circuit design, I can actually design this out of here. So, yeah. Hopefully that teaches you something. You gotta be really careful with your grounds. Really, really careful with your grounds. They are important. So, yeah. Until next time. Heh. Yeah.